Okay, welcome. Happy Wednesday as I'm recording this. You may recall a while back, and hopefully audio and video is coming through. There's a low-flying plane cruising overhead. So hopefully that's not coming through to you, but it's coming through to me, which is annoying enough. You may recall a while back we looked at There and Hack Again, which was based on the Black Hack to create sort of Tolkien-esque adventures. Well, we're back. That was from Lakeside Games. This one's from Lakeside Games. And this one is called By This Axe I Hack, which, judging from that title, I think we're going to be getting some swords and sorcery action in the, I guess, the Conan-esque vein. Though I think it's a play on words, I believe, of By This Axe I Rule. And I can't remember if it was Conan that said there was actually Cull the Conqueror that said that. In any case, whomever it was that said it, it's cool. It's a cool saying, and we're here with it. And I'm looking forward to it. I really enjoyed There and Hack Again, though. I'm still as rusty in my Black Hack as ever I was. So feel free to correct me in the chat when I make the inevitable errors or wrong assumptions, presumptions, or other things. As usual, so the author was kind enough to give this to me so I could do this stream, but they had no say in what I said or what I will say. And of course, I'm doing this live, and I have not even pre-read it beforehand, so even I don't know what I'm going to say. Certainly, nobody else does. Leonard. Oh yeah, Leonard, who I believe is the author. Hey, Leonard says it was Cull. I thought it was Cull, but I couldn't remember for sure. Let's read the intro here. Welcome to a world of sword and sorcery. Before the dawn of recorded history, our world was a primeval landscape dotted with pockets of civilization, kingdoms, nations, and city-states surrounded by a vast and unforgiving wilderness teeming with danger and littered with the fallen ruins of an ancient empire of mighty sorcerer lords and the remnants of older, darker civilizations. Based on David Black's game-changing The Black Hack, By This Axe I Hack, takes its cues from Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian and Cull of Atlantis, Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith's Red Sonja, Michael Moorcock's Elric of Melniboné, and Fritz Lieber's Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. By this Axe I Hack includes 18 unique character classes, 6 warriors, 6 rogues, and 6 magicians, a magic system with 120 spells tailored to the sword and sorcery genre, over 70 special features to customize your characters, rules for modifying existing character classes or creating your own, a huge assortment of men and monsters to throw at your players, a number of optional rules to help you fine-tune the game to exactly your liking, and a variety of random tables to help game masters create their own Lost First Age. Sloring Scott mentions that Conan was a sword wielder. Yes, that's true, but I think he'd use an axe if need arose. I wouldn't put it past him. And Fredrick says, nice to compare this to Grey Elf's free Conan 4 OD&D game. I don't think I've read that one, Frederick. I might have to look that one up. And maybe, yeah, then we could compare how they do the things they do. As has been my want of late, I'm going to try to be a little bit, targeted in what I read over. I'm not going to try to read through the whole thing back to front because it might take me forever. So I'm going to try to get to the things, at least that I think is super interesting. If you happen to be here in the chat, then you are welcome to point out something to me that you feel like we should cover or take a look at. If you're not in the chat and you're watching this or listening to this later, feel free to comment at me. I can always come back and revisit something if it seems like there was a subject that I either brushed over too quickly or didn't spend enough time on. However, whatever the case may be. We have a table of contents. We're looking at over 116 pages, including, fronts, matters, and whatnot. I'm going to skip over the core mechanics. I think we get advantage and disadvantage. I think some of the stuff is going to seem very familiar. Leonard, did this one come out? Which one came first? There and Hack Again or By This Axe I Hack? And that way, by the way, since these are two very similar, if there's something that I'm not covering here, it's possible that I covered it in the other stream. So go check out that stream There and Hack Again, which might include some of the things that I'm not covering here. Okay, this one. So this is the first. All right. So I'm going to go over. I'm gonna breeze over these. I want to get to the fun stuff. So let's start with classes. We're split up into warriors, rogues, and magicians. Warriors, we've got archers, barbarians, captains, knights, nomads, and soldiers. Rogues, we have assassins, bravos, natives, pirates, scouts, and thieves. Magicians, beast lords, druids, mystics, shamans, sorcerers, and warlocks. Got saves. I'm going to skip over that, but we do have flaws. This, I think, is important. Sword and sorcery heroes are far from perfect. If they wish, players can roll a d20 on the flaws table or simply pick and make up a flaw for their character. This is entirely optional and only to encourage roleplay. I would definitely say pick one. And something I like to do, I think is a good idea. If you're going to give flaws, I get not wanting to give them a lot of mechanics, because if you start weighing the characters down with a bunch of negatives, either they're going to want corresponding positives, and that kind of the min-max tradition. Ooh, I'll take gluttony, which gives me a -2 to this, but then I want a +1 or +2 to something else. You may want to avoid that. But what you can do is you can tie it into some kind of inspiration meta currency, something you can turn in to get advantage or cancel off disadvantage. And what you can say is that in order to get this inspiration, or whatever you want to call it, you have to, as the player, you must engage with a flaw in a way that has a real material effect on whatever's happening. So, for example, let's say we have the flaw of honorable, which means that this individual is noble, honest, and trustworthy to a fault. If you want to get that inspiration, you have to engage with your honorable flaw in a way that's actually going to be detrimental. So you can't engage with it when someone's saying, "Show me an honorable man and I'll give him a kingdom." And you show up and say, "Haha, I'm your honorable man, sir." That's just to your benefit. But if there's a case in which maybe the party would get in trouble or somebody would choose not to like them, and one of those things that you want to make a deal with somebody, but you know you've done something to them that they don't know about, your honorable person just can't let it slide. They're going to say, "All right, I got to tell you, oh, by the way, I killed your brother." No. But they have to tell them because they're honorable, that kind of thing. And if they do that, it's totally their player's choice. They can never do it if they don't want to. But if they do that, they can get some kind of meta currency that they can spend to help them when they're in a bind. I find that kind of thing might encourage players to engage with this sort of system that otherwise might avoid it, because who wants to take negatives just for kicks. Resolve. Pulp, sword, and sorcery heroes bend the world to their will. To support this idea, characters begin every adventure with 3 points of resolve. Players can spend resolve at any time to do the following. Oh, so this is kind of like inspiration. So I would even say you could just take that flaw system and roll it into how they might be able to refill that resolve. So that if you can spend resolve to reroll a test or a roll, recover from being defeated, recover from failing a fear test, cast an expended spell, roll normally, or recover 1 hit die of hit points, roll with advantage, attempt a nigh impossible feat, though roll with disadvantage. Once per game session, a character who performs an especially cool, heroic, or otherwise thematically appropriate action can recover 1 point of spent resolve. This has no effect if the character hasn't spent resolve. Oh yeah, I would definitely say we could just roll this flaws system into that resolve so that they can, if they've spent resolve, so you can't end up with more than 3, but if you spent some, you can get some back by engaging with your flaws. Get experience, gaining levels. I'm not gonna, we have some way of basically getting some, what was it, like your attribute. You can raise your attributes. That's great. Here we have what we're getting on the entries. So we get starting hit points, their hit die. What can they use? Usable armor, their attack damage, any special features, starting equipment. Warriors, come out to play. We have the archer. Expert sharpshooters who have trained with their chosen weapon since childhood. Their skills are always in high demand. I'm not going to, I'm going to leave to you. You can see it here on the screen. I'm not going to go through and rattle off their hit dice and blah, 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 because, it's there. Check it out. And this is a swig of watered down apple cider for the working man. I'm going to really, I think, get a hue to just doing the special features and that kind of thing. And I'll leave the starting equipment and some of that other stuff just to the side. For your enjoyment, you can read that on your own and know there are links. This is available on DriveThruRPG, and there are links in the show notes and descriptions and whatnots and wherefores. For the archers, they have Hawkeye. They have advantage when testing wisdom to see things over long distances. Cool. So they've got kind of a good, sharp eye. Marksmanship, they deal +1 damage with bows and crossbows, and then bonus stacks with ranged specialists. They get multiple attacks on their odd levels. Let's see. So the archers can perform one attack per round per odd level. So they get one at level 1, they have 2 at level 3, 3 at level 5, so on and so forth. Ranged specialists, they deal +1 damage with ranged weapons. So they get, oh, that's cool. So they have basically marksmanship is specifically for bows and crossbows, but then ranged specialist is any ranged weapon. So if they're using a sling, they still get that +1 damage. But when they're using a bow, they get +2 damage essentially, because one for it being a ranged weapon and then one for being a bow. And then they also get the ability to do trick shots. They can fire a trick shot that allows them to perform combat maneuvers in ranged combat. Players should get creative with this ability. So, I'll let them do fun archery kind of stuff. The stuff that I've seen in TikToks and little shorts and things like that of archers doing all kinds of weird things with their arrows. Barbarian. Known for their ferocity, barbarians are savage warriors who typically hail from some untamed northern hinterland or the red wastes of the south. And their features are berserker. They can step up their melee damage by 1 die. So, example, up to a D10/D6. Let's see. Multiple attacks they can perform. Okay, so they get more. I'm just going to read that. Multiple attacks. I'm not going to keep repeating the particulars. Multiple attacks. They get multiple attacks. They get a second wind, which I think we'll get if I think 4th edition literally had a thing called second wind, I believe, for fighters, or maybe it was everybody, where you could just recover 1 hit die. This is kind of the same, and they get that increases in efficacy at higher levels. Vitality, they have advantage when rolling for natural hearing or when testing their constitution to determine if they're wounded or after a defeat. And they also get woodcraft, which gives them advantage on all tests involving foraging, hunting, stalking, tracking, outdoor survival, and alertness in the wild. Because, they're barbarians. So that's a barbarian-y thing to do. Next up, we have the captain. These are veteran soldiers who have risen through the ranks and know how to lead and motivate others, especially in battle. They can use command. They have advantage when testing charisma to command, impress, inspire, or lead others. And then inspire. Once per day, captains can test charisma to heal all characters within closing range, 2 hit points times the captain's level. And then this gets better as they level up. They also get multiple attacks. And they can also rally. Once per combat, captains can test their charisma to grant all characters within closing range advantage on their next attack. That's awfully nice. And then it gets better as they level up. Knights. These are elite soldiers trained to fight in heavy armor and skilled in mounted combat. They are called cataphracts in the East. They're a melee specialist. They deal +1 damage with melee weapons. They also get multiple attacks. They can shield bash, which is when a knight rolls a 5, 10, 15, or 20 on a successful melee defense test while armed with a buckler or shield. The attacker takes damage or extra on a critical success equal to the character's level. So that's very cool. So if they've got their sword and board type approach, and they do a good melee defense, and basically get a counterattack. Western horsemanship. You've got advantage on all tests involving horses, horsemanship, and mounted combat. Unlike other characters, knights don't suffer disadvantage when fighting mounted opponents while on foot. I wonder if so. Do we have an Eastern horsemanship that's different? I wonder if there would be an Eastern horsemanship that would be more your mounted archer kind of thing. You get nomads. Oh yeah, they look at that. I should have just looked at the next page because it's right here. Under nomads. Nomads are skilled riders and horse archers. Many roam the vast plains beyond the inland sea or serve in the mobile armies of the East. Why do you cry, Subutai? Conan cannot cry, so I cry for him. Eastern horsemanship. They get advantage in all tests involving horses, horsemanship, and mounted combat. Unlike other characters, nomads don't suffer disadvantage on ranged attack tests while mounted. Multiple attacks. They also get versatile fighter, which means they deal +1 damage with melee and ranged weapons, and they also know woodcraft, much like the barbarians. And then finally, for the last of the martial type characters, we get soldiers, also called mercenaries. These are professional fighters that include adventurers, brigands, gladiators, guards, sellswords, and actual soldiers. They have combat reflexes, which gives them advantage on initiative. They are melee specialists, so they get +1 damage with melee weapons. They also get multiple attacks. And they also get second wind. Ooh, I feel like I'm going on a whirlwind, but we're getting there. Rogues, onto the roguish sorts. First up are the assassins. These are stealthy killers who slay for coin, country, or both. They are masters of subterfuge and skilled in the poisoner's art. They get extra attacks. They're a finesse fighter, which means they can use their dexterity instead of strength if using light melee weapons. They have access to poisons, which means they begin every adventure with D6 usage of 2d6 damage poison, and then the I guess the lethality of the poison increases as their level increases, and they get advantage on tests involving poisons. They can pursue skullduggery. They have advantage when testing charisma to deceive others, whether through simple lies or complex deceptions, disguises, and or forgeries. They can be stealthy, and they can do thief stuff. I'm gonna start skipping some of the particulars on the ones that I feel like are kind of obvious. I don't know if we need to read. They have advantage on stealth. I think we get what that means. They can do thief stuff. That's your finding, disarming traps, yada yada yada. Yo, Bravo doesn't necessarily have to be from Bravos to be a Bravo. Bravos specialize in fighting with light weapons and little to no armor, which is common in warmer climes and among nobles and sailors. Hello, sailor. They have combat reflexes. They're elusive, which means that once per day they can reroll a failed melee test, a ranged defense test, or a reflex save with advantage on the reroll. And then they can do it more times at higher levels. And Leonard says, unlike Darren Hack again, this game does use the Black Hack's usage die system. Yes. I should have pointed that out. I did notice that you'd made reference once or twice to the usage die. Darren Hack again did not use the usage die, which was pointed out, I think, by Fredrick in the chat of that stream. Eagle-eared, eagle-eyed Fredrick pointed out that we were not using the usage die, but here we are. Bravos also get, they're a melee specialist. They have multiple attacks, and they can riposte, which means that looks like it's basically similar to the shield thing that the knights get. But when they roll some numbers on a successful defense, when they're armed with a light blade, the attacker takes damage. So basically, whereas the knight gets that with his shield, the Bravo gets it by having a light weapon. Okay, awesome. And now natives. These are tribal hunters, trackers, and warriors who hail from wild lands like the untamed forests of the west or the jungles of the south. They have keen senses. They are melee specialists. They get multiple attacks. They are nimble, stealthy, and they also know woodcraft. Pirates, also called sailors. I guess it depends on whose side of the flag you're on, whether they're sailors or pirates or privateers. These swashbuckling heroes or red-handed cutthroats blend fighting skill with cunning and nautical know-how. They are melee specialists. They get multiple attacks. They are nimble. They have pantherish agility. They understand seamanship, and they are stealthy. And they can throw knots at you and dare you to untie them. Scouts are hunters, outriders, rangers, and woodsmen who have learned to brave the dangers of the untamed wilderness. They are hunters. They have multiple attacks. They are stealthy. They are versatile fighters, and they understand woodcraft. Thieves are expert at breaking into places and stealing things. Most are outlaws, but a few are canny explorers or heroes to the downtrodden. Your Robin Hood types, I presume. They're clever, and that is that once per day, they can automatically declare that they know some obscure bit of information, like how to read an ancient language, where to find the ruins of an antediluvian city, the answer to a riddle, etc. I really like that one. That's nice. They get extra attacks. They are finesse fighters. They are nimble. They are stealthy. And, of course, they can do thief stuff. On to the magicians. The Beast Lord. Beast Lords are rare individuals born with a unique affinity for animals and the instinctive ability to perform feats of natural magic. They've got keen senses. They get multiple attacks. They have natural magic, which means that they can learn one magical practice at level 1 and then so on and so forth. They may only learn the following practices: herbalism, natural magic, and transformation. They have a wild empathy, which means they can speak with animals at will, and they know woodcraft. That's a cool. I like that one. Because I was about to say, I'm curious how it'll compare and contrast to druids, and we're going to find out because the druids right here. Druids are practitioners of nature magic who focus their arcane studies on living things and natural forces. They are sometimes called white wizards. Is Gandalf a druid? Or I guess that would be Saruman and then Gandalf? Different genre, I know. Special features: arcane lore. They can read ancient and arcane languages. They have the ability to create defensive wards. Or no, actually no, it's not a creation. It's something that they can do, which is that they can basically use will saves instead of fortitude or reflex saves. They're a lore master. They can sense magic and they understand white magic, which means that they can learn the following practices: divination, herbalism, natural magic, physical laws, transformation, and transmutation. A mystic, on the other hand, is trained to develop their minds and bodies from childhood. They are aesthetic monks that can cast spells and perform incredible feats of athleticism. So these are the martial artist types. They can deal armed damage even when unarmed. And it says, funny, they don't look Druish. Ah, yes. Mind over matter. Once per day, mystics can re-roll a failed fortitude save or will save with advantage on the re-roll. That's nice. Mystic disciplines. Basically, they can learn divination, force, herbalism, mesmerism, telepathy, and transformation. And I'm going to say I like the fact that we have some overlap in these so far, but nothing completely overlapping. So I almost think as a player, if I didn't love or, depending on what I felt about the other abilities, I'd probably want to come down here and look to see what practices I liked and then maybe found the class that lined up with the practices. And they are also nimble, which we've seen before. Now, shamans, also called witches or witch doctors, these are magicians that gain power by making pacts with ancestors, nature spirits, or forces beyond mortal ken. So, kind of similar to the warlock in 5th edition parlance. Let's see. So, they do feature corruption, which means that they must roll or select a flaw from the price of power table, which I don't think we've seen yet. That's not the flaw table above, was it? Forcing myself to go back and see. No, so this will be a different table. Oh, we have warlocks too. Interesting. Okay, so different type of flaw. We'll be interested. I'll be interested to see how that works. They get the power to entreaty. Once per day, they can ask their supernatural patron for one of the following boons, either to grant the shaman or an ally advantage, heal the shaman or ally 4 times the shaman's level hit points, or third, revive a defeated ally with no chance of their being wounded. They can do this, and then they get more entreaties as they level up. Those are pretty powerful. I like it. Iron Will. The only I'm just curious if there and there might not be something is because the one thing I think of this going back to kind of Conan stuff, right? Uh Conan the Barbarian, the I guess he was he a shaman? I would have considered him a shaman. I forgot his name. He was played by Mako, and he's the guy who was narrating at the beginning, and then towards the end of the movie, when Conan, spoiler alert, Conan dies when he from the Tree of Woe. Yeah, I think he was on the Tree of Woe, and they cut him down, but he basically dies, and then they make the deal to bring him back. With a got to pay a price, and she says, whatever the price is, I'll pay it, and he does kind of a ritual. So I'm wondering if, or it would have been interesting to see, what the length of the ritual, or there's something you could get into is kind of what this entreaty looks like, what this ritual looks like, how long does it take? Does that have to be at a certain time of day or night? I don't know if they make it in the movie, if they really make mention of how long it is or when it is, but in their case, they do it overnight, and she had to protect his body from the spirits. I don't know if I want to go have a whole night worth of encounters to run this kind of ritual, but that would have been something interesting. Obviously that's something I might play with if I was playing this and I had a character who wanted to be a shaman. I might want to work out with him. Hey, when do you have to do this? What does it look like? And then see how to kind of turn that into something. Iron Will. Shamans have advantage on will saves to resist magical spells and effects and fear of the supernatural. They get shamanic magic, which means they can learn from it looks like they have their choice of practices. So they're the first one I've seen so far. They can choose. If I'm reading this correctly, they can choose which practices they want. And they can also sense magic. Now, sorcerers, they go by many names, but they are all powerful magicians who have devoted themselves to studying the dark arts and mastering its secrets. They know arcane lore. They also have to check their corruption. They can empower spells. Basically, that means that they can take damage to gain advantage on their spell roll, which is a cool idea. They have an iron will. They can sense magic, and they have true sorcery. And they also can choose their practices. So if you want to be an a la carte practitioner of magic, right now the shaman and the sorcerer are your bets. Fredrick says, roll d12 to see how many encounters to be played out. D12? Oh my gosh. It's a little bit much. Leonard says that what I'm referring to would be something called a ritual that's covered in the magic section. Cool. Hopefully we'll get there. If you're wondering why I'm working with speed, it's hopefully I can get through a lot of this and we don't end up rushing the end or not making it. We'll see how I do. Now we get warlocks, and the warlocks seem to be a lot like at least the 5th edition warlock sounds a lot like a shaman. Well, let's see what the by this axe I hack warlock is. This is a paled, dispossessed sorcerer lord, schooled in war and magic. Warlocks are all that remains of a once mighty empire, long since fallen into decay. I'm guessing this is maybe kind of your Elric type, maybe. They have ancient pacts, which means they have advantage on all tests involving their knowledge of and/or ability to interact with demons, devils, spirits, elemental lords, or demigods. Doesn't apply to magic texts or sorcery tests, I should say. They also have to check for their corruption. They have access to lesser sorcery. And let's see. And then they can learn up to 3 practices. They do get multiple attacks, and they get a rune blade. These are ancient daggers, swords, or great swords, you pick one, with demons bound in their blades. They may even begin with a matched pair of rune blades, although these paired weapons share one power, accessible only when used together. And then we're going to see some rune blades below, which basically means on this facing page. I said, maybe. Once I got down to rune blade, I was like, okay, yeah, this is definitely the Elric sort. Now, onto this price of power, these corruptions. The D12 table, and I'm not gonna read all the descriptions, but I'll give you the titles, which I think are gonna give you an idea of what they are. You could have animal aversion, bad luck, be callous, cursed, disfigured, frail, inhuman, light sensitive, nocturnal, obsessed, thrall, or unsettling. Not that you're necessarily unsettled, but you unsettle those around you. Onto the rune blades. Like all artifacts, rune blades inflict +1 damage per attack. Additionally, these ancient and accursed weapons allow their wielders to use charisma when making melee attack and defense tests, and they each begin with 1 power. And we can roll, select, or make up our own. These malign weapons always manage to find their way back if lost or stolen, despite the fact that they typically despise their owners and eventually mean to do them harm. Now, the powers that we can get from rune blades, it's another D12 table. The powers, let's see, Black Heart, which basically stops aging. Cosmic Exalt, they gain, I guess looks like a permanent +1 to their intelligence and charisma. Doom Flight, they can be thrown and they return after they're thrown. Flame Strike, they can deal extra fire damage. Frostbite, deal extra frost damage. Life Drinker, they heal hit points equal to the foe that they've slain, their hit dice. They could have a Lunar Exalt, which means they gain 1 permanent 1 dex and wisdom, or maybe at least while they're wielding it. I'm not sure how that would work. Either way. Or Solar Exalt, which they gain strength and constitution. They could be a Soul Thief and grant the wielder the memories of slain foes. Could be a curse and a benefit. Stormcaller, they deal lightning damage. Thunderer, they deal thunder damage. Or a Wraith Blade, they deal void damage. All good stuff. All right, I'm going to skip equipment. We do here have the usage die showing how it goes from D20 at its maximum down to D4. And then basically a table, it looks like some kind, maybe to just convert, you can just check basically how many uses for usage die from 30 uses at the high end, high limit, to 2 uses at the low limit. On to combat. I'm not sure how much to read in the combat section. Leonard, if you could tell me, if you know, there's anything particular that's, say, unique, different, interesting about what this is doing in combat versus kind of Black Hack Prime. Let's see. Leonard says the companion includes more arcane flaws and more types of rune blades / rune blade powers. Oh, cool. What does BTA stand for? Oh, by this axe. I gotcha. Oh, Leonard says it's mostly similar except adds crits. Okay, so let's go to the crits. So we're gonna go to the crits. When a character rolls a critical success on an attack or a critical failure on a defense test, the attack inflicts double damage. When a character rolls a critical success on a defense test or a critical failure on an attack test, the attacker opens themselves up and gets struck by the defender, roll damage against the attacker. This doesn't count as an action by the defender, who can act normally during their turn to act. So cool. I'm down with that. Two-fisted fighting. Characters using a two-handed melee weapon or a melee weapon in each hand deal plus 2 points of damage per attack. Characters using a melee weapon in one hand and a buckler or shield in the other hand may deal plus 1 point of damage per attack, but this stops them from using the shield defensively. I like that. So I actually like doing things a little bit differently between. I don't make equivalent two-handed, two weapons in each hand versus two-handers, but I do like the idea that you can add damage with your shield, but then you don't get it defensively. Because oftentimes people want to say like, well, can I use my shield offensively? Like, what can I do? Well, this is nice and simple. Yeah, you can get extra damage, which you may absolutely need to do at some point, but can't have it both. If you have used your shield to jam the guy and bang him in their nose, you've taken your shield out of position, so you lose the defensive benefit. It's very very neat and tidy. I like that. All right, we have armor. I'm gonna kind of breeze over that. All out attacks, full of defenses. I'm gonna breeze over these. We have ongoing damage. Defeats. I'll just read this a little bit. I think it's in not much different than there in Hack again and Black Hack, but it's just an important to note. The character who reaches 0 hit points is defeated, unconscious, and out of action for the rest of the fight. Once combat ends and the heroes are out of danger, an ally can revive the character. If not, the character recovers when the next scene begins. Once they do, the character rolls 1 hit die and heals that many hit points. They also test their constitution to avoid being wounded. The character is defeated more than once in the same adventure. The second and all subsequent constitution tests to avoid being wounded have disadvantage. Wounded characters have disadvantage on all tests for the rest of the adventure. If a wounded character is wounded again, they're knocked out of the action for the rest of the adventure or killed, depending on whether character death is on the table. So basically, you basically get kind of a gimme. You've been knocked out, you come back up, you're wounded. And we saw there are already a couple of things that can mitigate that wounded state. Was it the shaman, I think, could ask for their patron to bring you back without being wounded. And then, but once you've hit that part where you've taken that wound, it's, assuming like as is said here, that death is on you didn't have a session 0 type of discussion about not having death. Then basically your one gimme for the adventure is done. And you could probably play around with how you want to define an adventure. At least in kind of OSR D&D, old D&D, an adventure was kind of a session, was what they would say the adventure, not the whole module, let's say. But so I don't know here, and maybe Leonard, you could say, did you mean it for a session or for an actual whole adventure? But either way, it's nice. It gives a little bit of leeway. I think most folks, enjoy giving the characters just a bit more than 0 you die. I've done that in my game. I just enjoy the tension of it. And I kind of like the idea of you're able to get this one gimme, which is great. But then when you're walking wounded, get disadvantage on a bunch of stuff, and now you're at death's door. So it does kind of ratchet up the tension going forward. Oh, so okay. So in this case, we're talking a whole adventure. They mean the whole adventure, not a session. So you could be wounded for a long time. And we get some maneuvers here: disarming, grappling, shoving, throwing, tripping. Mobs. I think we looked at mobs already in the other one. But or maybe not. I don't know. I'll read it here. Lesser foes fight characters in groups called mobs. A mob is treated like a single enemy in combat. The members of a mob always have 1 hit point each, regardless of their hit dice. When a character hits a mob, they automatically defeat 1 member, or on a regular success, or 2 on a critical success. You don't need to roll for damage. This doesn't apply when dealing with attacks and spells that already affect multiple targets. Mobs can attack 1 target for every 2 members, but each target can only be attacked once per round. A character attacked by a mob makes 1 defense roll rolled with a 1 defense test rolled with disadvantage. If the attack hits, the damage is doubled. If the attack misses, it still deals 1 point of damage that ignores protection from fatigue, minor cuts, etc. A large enough mob is always dangerous. And I always love those kinds of rules because, yes, you want that angry villager sort of rule to have teeth that, hey, they can come get you And if there's enough of them, even if you're Conan himself, you can be overwhelmed. That happens often in those stories. We have morale, great healing, resting, mounted vehicles, some mass combat. On to the adventuring section. Leonard says the companion also provides better rules for combat maneuvers. Hangs head in shame. I'll just throw that out there. Yeah, so there is a companion to this, which I do not currently have, and that obviously gives some extra things as companions are wont to do. Companion texts, not physical companions or animal companions or whatever other companions you can conjure up. Random encounters. The GM should roll a d6 for every 30 minutes of time that passes in the real world. I know this was true in There and Hack Again. I'm guessing this is probably a black hack thing, but maybe not. They're using a real world timer and not a fictional timer, which may work good for you if your party is, I guess it depends on what you want. If your party is doing a serious amount of lollygagging the players, not the characters, you're going to get a lot of random encounters, which might encourage them to do things more quickly. Of course, if they are on the ball, they're doing things quickly, you're going to get a lot less encounters. So they have that incentive, just real world, to just play quickly. But if you're counting on them having a certain amount of random encounters, A, you probably shouldn't do that too. Or B, if they are moving quickly, if you don't fudge it, they're going to undermine that particular mechanic, which isn't a bad thing. And I would maintain, don't plan your game sessions like, oh, I'm going to have this many random encounters, because you never know how the dice are going to roll for you or fail to roll for you. We get reactions, 2d6 table again, 2 attack immediately, on a 12 offer or request assistance, and then all kinds of mixed reactions in between. We get some fall damage table. We have fear. Characters will make a will save whenever they encounter an unfamiliar supernatural horror. Those who fail this fear test are unnerved and suffer disadvantage on all tests until they defeat or get away from the horror. On a crit failure, character must roll on the terror failure, and this is another terror table, another 2d6 table. There's a bunch of things here, but it's madness. Very and I think there was something similar in the There and Hack Again, but it's very thematic in those Conan stories. How often is Conan or somebody else running, screaming from something, and then they end up, almost the fear kills them if there's some kind of minor NPC. You'll find them, and they'll be the next page. Or I really love to read those large format Conan comics, and I could just see in my head the one frame where the guy's screaming through some hallway, and you can see the text of written over his head, and then the next frame is the whitened corpse, just mouth agape, eyes rolled back. It's what they do. If you're Conan, you maybe get to recover, but lots and lots of horrors that you have to face and try to wrap your mind around. Hey, Perkins, glad you could make it. We have fire, we get languages, we get luck. Leonard says, in practice, PCs always spend their resolve to reroll a failed fear test. That totally makes sense, because failing that fear disadvantage could be, and depending on what the nature of the horror is, it might be a while before they can defeat or get away from it. And then, you get that crit failure. There's a chance you just go mad and then just an NPC or just something else happens. So I would definitely, be a good thing to keep a couple of resolve. Maybe have one resolve that you can just spend on something frivolous. You probably want to keep at least 2. One for maybe rerolling getting out of a death situation or a defeat situation, and maybe one for getting out of a horror situation. Because I wouldn't want to end up in that spot. Poisons, because poisons are definitely a thing in these kinds of games, in this genre. I'm going to kind of skip over, but we just have a few. We have an enfeebling disease, a narcotic drug, a soporific drug, debilitating poison, a harmful poison, lethal poisons, and paralytic poisons. I think they're all, the particulars I will leave for you, but I think we get the sense of what they all are. Traps and hazards. These often have telltale signs for anyone looking carefully or moving cautiously. Otherwise, characters can test wisdom with disadvantage to detect a trap or hazard before triggering it, and the kinds of traps and hazards we have: falling blocks, nets or snares, pit traps, poison fangs. This is when a character's palm or finger is jabbed by a poison needle. Projectile traps, rope bridges. The rope bridge is pre-existing, but the fact that it's faulty or it's been trapped so that it snaps when characters are in the middle of it. Rough waters, some kind of spring blade or spike, or thin ice. Probably wouldn't be a trap though. Could be maybe a natural hazard. I suppose that would be also the hazard of the rope bridge. It hasn't necessarily been set that way purposefully, but rope's getting old. You're in some kind of weird cavern. It's dank, it's damp. Stuff starts to rot. Perkins says, "Nice nerf poison, OD&D poison, save or die." Yeah. I think, and not only OD&D, but yeah, I think basic expert at least. I'm not sure in first edition if it's save or die. Still, I made my own hack for poisons. I like having different types. I like slowing them down because again, I like the tension of your character's poisoned and they're dying, but it's not just a foregone conclusion that they're dead. So what do you do about it? I like those situations. So for me, save or die, that is just immediate, not my thing. I think I would probably actually replace a lot of save or die traps with kind of that save or dying, because I don't mind the fact that you're dying, but I want to give you a chance to respond. I mean, there's the odd, hey, it's a bottomless pit and you fell into it and it's bottomless, so you're gone. You're gone. You step into the pool that's filled with an acid, you're dead. But other than those things, I like to put them in the process of dying, which can really change a whole encounter, can change a whole adventure really on its head. When the party ends up in a situation where someone's dying, now they have to make choices. Do we see if we can finish or get to some point before they die? Do we just immediately retreat? Do we leave them to die alone in the dark? Which was what my party chose. They dragged the poor victim out, left them by the campsite to die, and they went back in. I think that's partly my fault because I didn't really emphasize the fact that they could maybe do something about it. They were like, "Oh, they're poisoned, they're toast," even though it's slow and it seems like they might be suffering for hours. Well, we're gonna go there. I don't have a lot of like health potions in my games. They didn't. I was really leaving up to them to give them some kind of find some sort of outside the box solution, but they might not have been fully aware of that. But in any case, they didn't do it, so the guy just slowly expired out in the campsite. Perkins says DOA style, dead man walking, rush home to get saved. Yep, could be. Leonard says that there is a kind of save or die that's the lethal poison, but they normally deal damage. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, save or die, it has its place for a few things, but I like the save or dying is my favorite. On to sorcery. So there are 12 kinds of practices. I want to get into the practices more than the tests themselves. So we know how we're going to be doing our sorcery test. The practices are alchemy, divination, force, herbalism, mesmerism, our old friend Anton Mesmer, natural magic, necromancy, physical laws, summoning, telepathy, transformation, and transmutation. And we can see here which attribute they are all linked to, and then also what kinds of saves are related to them, if any. Basically, a character's roll saves when targeted by a spell. If they fail their save, the spell takes effect. And then spells that target multiple subjects affect them in order of hit dice from lowest to highest. So you got that. And then, yeah, I'm going to skip over some of these. Some spells let magicians create, summon, and or control NPCs. NPCs under a character's control are minions. Players roll tests for their minions using a default stat score of 10 plus half the minion's hit dice, and also use the minion's hit dice for purpose of the powerful opponent's rule. So you can get your little homunculus going on. Rituals. Here we go, because we talked about that a little bit earlier. Magicians can also perform rituals, great and terrible magic that can do almost anything. Most rituals are closely guarded secrets, passed only to a select few. All require a great deal of preparation, and many demand terrible sacrifices. Being purely narrative, rituals are left up to the GM. For the most part, rituals are the purview of NPCs and serve as plot devices for the game. When the characters are dealing with rituals, they're usually trying to prevent them from happening or counter their effects. So this is they're trying to summon Orcus through the door. The evil priests are doing a ritual. So like the one I mentioned before, when I forget the guy's name, Mako playing the "I'm a wizard, mind you" character in the Conan movie, he is conducting a ritual. In this case, maybe we would say Mako's an NPC who's doing this for us. We wanted to keep it in these terms, or this could be a one-off ritual to do something for Conan. All right, let's get into these. And I don't know if I'm going to read all the individual spells, because I am conscious of time. But we'll definitely read through. Maybe I'll pick one or two, and I'm obviously going to read through the main bits about it. So first up is alchemy. Magicians who study alchemy create magical compounds, potions, and powders. Alchemy spells, quote unquote, represent globes, vials, and other containers filled with these strange concoctions. A critical failure on an alchemy spell usually means the character suffers the intended effect. So, for example, you're trying to make some powder that's choking dust. If you were to crit fail, you probably spilled the powder and it got all up in your face, and so you were choking. So we have choking dust, corrosive fluid, explosive powder, flash powder, liquid fire, liquid hellfire, luminescent fluid, smoking mixture, soporific gas, and tomb dust. I think I'm just going to read the titles and just let your imagination fill in the details. But these are all physical things. So here, this is why they use spell in quotes, because in this case, a spell could be a powder, could be some kind of fluid, yada, yada, yada. You get the idea. Divination, these spells let magicians glean information. Spells tied to a specific person, place, or thing, like scrying and seeker, require a physical link, such as hair, nail clippings, saliva, etc., unless the magician knows the subject personally. A critical failure on a divination spell usually provides false information or overwhelms the magician, causing 2d6 psychic damage and preventing them from casting any more divination spells for the rest of the day. So, you want to be careful. Maybe. And these spells include augury, comprehension, detection, intuition, predictions, psychometry, scrying, seeker, signs and portents, and true sight. Force spells involve using the power of the mind to create physical force. A critical failure on a force spell usually reflects the energy back onto the magician, who suffers 1d4 damage per level and loses their next turn to act. And these include battering ram, bind, control object, eviscerate, forceful strikes, hold, levitate, living weapon, shatter, and shield. Ah, the old classic shield. Herbalism involves the preparation of balms, ointments, powders, and poultices. Herbalism's quote-unquote spells represent jars, vials, and other containers filled with these substances. These spells only affect living beings. A critical failure on an herbalism spell usually means the preparation is toxic and inflicts poison damage rather than its intended effect. That's rough. So don't crit fail on your herbalism. I definitely think for some of these, I'd want to roll behind the screen because I definitely want to not have them know that it's gone toxic, unless it's obvious. Maybe you'd say it's obvious to them, but I think I kind of like the fact that I think I prepped this well as they're handing you the thing to drink. Oh, drink this bubbling, boiling, nasty smelling thing. Should heal you, might poison you. Let's see. These spells include antitoxins, curative drafts, healing elixirs, love potions, potions of might, potions of truth, powders of forgetfulness, pungent salves, sleeping powders, and soothing balms. Mesmerism. I know a guy is always likes Anton Mesmer, and he'll say something like he needs some kind of old-timey 19th century voice. It's Anton Mesmer. So look up Anton Mesmer. He was a hypnotist, or he also worked in hypnotism, and from his name we get mesmerism. It's kind of an interesting story, actually. Mesmerism spells manipulate the minds of others. They require eye contact with the subject and have no effect on inanimate objects or insensate beings like constructs or mindless undead. Critical failure on a mesmerism spell usually means the subject forcefully repels the magician's mental influence, rendering the spellcaster unconscious for d6 rounds. Ouch. These include charm, command, distraction, dominate, fatal visions, forget, hallucination, illusion, paralytic stare, and suggestion. Another says, that's why I call this mesmerism. It's a very pulp word. It is indeed. Natural magic deals with animals, plants, and the natural world. Briars and entangle require nearby plants, so they don't normally work indoors. A critical failure on a natural magic spell means the spell backfires in some way. Harmful spells affect the magician or an ally. Communication and friendship spells enrage their subjects. Get creative. The tree has become enraged. These include animal allies, passive, mental, speak with animals, and summon elements. Necromancy involves the manipulation of life, death, and undeath. Critical failure on a necromancy spell usually taints the soul. The The magician's complexion takes on a pallid cast, and they lose D6 con for the rest of the adventure. The tainted also unnerve children and animals. I might also say maybe you have to pick up one of those flaws. So maybe that's too much for a critical failure. I might have some kind of escalation on that. I like that. I like the idea that you go on this dark path and you start to look like the crypt keeper. Maybe you get your con back, but you are permanently more pale. Necromancy spells include command the dead, create undead, death touch, drain life, dust to dust, eyes of the dead, false flesh, imprison soul, skeletal mount, and speak with dead. Physical laws concern natural forces. A critical failure on a physical law spell means the spell backfires. Harmful spells affect the magician or an ally. Manipulation spells have the opposite effect of their intended effect, etc. And you get air bubble, control flame, darkness, daylight, gust of wind, the ever popular heap metal, summon fog, tempest, tremor, and walks on water. Summoning spells involve interacting with demons, devils, and other extraplanar beings, simply demons. Critical failure on a summoning spell means the magician has made a critical error. Summoned demons are free to act as they please. Attempts to control demons simply infuriate them. Defenses and wards fail, etc. The GM is encouraged to be creative and also cruel. You're infuriating me, magician. And these spells include Arcane Circle, Banish Demon, Commune, Condemn, Cross the Void, Demonic Pact, Herald, Render Corporeal, Summon Demons, and Ward. Telepathy spells involve reading minds and sending thoughts and emotions. They have no effect on inanimate objects or insensate beings like constructs or mindless undead. Critical failure on a telepathy spell usually means the subject forcefully repels the magician's mental influence, rendering the spellcaster unconscious for D6 rounds. Again, not so fun if you happen to get knocked unconscious. Perkins says that they like the idea of spell failure causing issues. Absolutely. Telepathic spells include agony, confuse, fear, fury, mind link, mind probe, possession, project consciousness, read thoughts, and send thoughts. Transformation spells let the magicians turn themselves into other things. A critical failure on a transformation spell usually deals 2d6 damage to the subject, leaves them transformed for longer than desired, or results in an awkward or dangerous transformation that can't be dispelled early. Yeah, I think I like that more than leaving them transformed for longer than desired. That's very situational. If you're transforming to something awesome and just lasts longer and you're in the dungeon, it probably doesn't do you any harm. But if it's kind of like you get all the awkward parts of the creature and none of the awesome things you were hoping for, that seems more in line with a failure. But of course, in other circumstances, you turn into a fly to do a little eavesdropping and then you can't turn yourself back from a fly. Could have a lot of fun with that. Transformation spells include beast form, greater beast form, master beast form, breath of the deep, claws, doppelganger, eyes of the cat, growth, swarm, and turn to mist. Transmutation spells affect others or alter the fabric of reality, turning one thing into another, bringing inanimate matter to life, etc. Critical failure on a transmutation spell usually means it backfires and has its effect inflicted on the magician or reversed in some unfortunate way. So unfortunate. These include animate statue, choking cloud, dispel, grease, invisibility, open/seal, petrify, polymorph, snake staff, and stop time. All right, finally, we're out of the spells. Lots of good stuff there. I like the practices. I like that we're given an idea of how to work with the critical failures on those. I think they're all pretty flavorful, and I think that I could all see different stories and elements in this kind of genre, sword and sorcery genre, where these would come into play. I'm not going to go into super detail on the enemies. It says dog head and tail. Nice. Yeah, you become dog boy. That's how your dog transformation went. I'm not going to go in depth in the enemies. Maybe we'll see if there's any that are super cool, but we'll see what they're there. So we have a whole bunch of just men, which is good because in Swords of Sorcery, really most of the time the enemies are just people of different sorts. You're in battles you don't want to be in. You're in castles you don't want to be in. Your cultists have caught you. You're trying to escape. You're trying to infiltrate cultists. Oftentimes, in your average Conan story, there's kind of one weird thing, and then the rest of it's pretty much all just people. So it makes sense. We get lots of people. Into the monsters, I'll just rifle through the names. You get an idea. So we've got giant ants, apes, four-armed apes, man-eating apes, winged apes. You got to have a lot of apes. Apes come up a lot. There is something scary about, apes are already bigger than us and bulkier than us. But then you get apes that are super massive, and they always draw them in the comics with just their mouths just seem to be able to just engorge our entire heads inside of them. Then you give them wings, forget about it. Forget about it. Aurochs, basilisks, greater basilisks, and lesser basilisks, giant bats, bears, cave bears, great bears, boars, giant boars, camels, a bunch of cats, giant centipedes. I'm always a fan of the giant centipede. I don't know why, but I am. Monstrous centipedes. What about the black meat of the aquatic centipede? Giant crabs, crawlers in the dark. I'm guessing those are your kind of your carrion crawler types. We have some crocodiles, cyclops, different demons, a whole bunch of demons, and a whole bunch of devils, dragons, dragon hawks, which is basically a pteranodon, eagles, some elementals, elephants, some different elements, elephants, flesh-eating plants. Get some ghouls, your intelligent ghouls, giants, half giants, harpies, hawks, hippos, horses, hydras, hyenas, hyena men. Ooh, I had hyena men. I created some hyena men. Someone steal my hyena men. I don't think anyone could copyright hyena men. Ryan Smith says spiked dragon is a stegosaurus, which is awesome. Yep, I didn't even notice that. Is that in parentheses there? Where's my dragons? Oh, yep, there it is. Yeah, and I like the fact that they're taking dinosaurs and by calling them dragons, which makes sense because if dinosaurs, you ran into dinosaurs somewhere and you didn't know what a dinosaur was, you would definitely think it's some kind of dragon. Where was I? We got our horses, the hyena men, jaguar men, krakens, living statues, lizards, man apes. Not to be confused with ape men, mummies, nagas, octopi, an onyx one, remoras, rhinos, scorpions, scorpion men. Gotta have your scorpion kings, sea monsters, sea serpents, some sharks, some skeletons, some serpent men, some snakes, spiders, some subhumans. You're less than human, you're a subhuman. Or maybe they just live underneath us. I don't know. They're chuds, maybe. Morlocks. We got our swarms, vampires, warhounds, wasps, werewolves, whales, wolves, wolverines, wraiths, yeti. Gotta have some yeti, and your zombies. Leonard says that the demons and basilisks are all dinos of various kinds. I did notice that, actually. Oh, look at that. So now we get this is kind of cool. So some setting info called The Lost Age. My glasses, come on. Primer. The Lost Age is a primitive time lost to modern history, trapped between ice ages. The world of the Lost Age is an almost primeval landscape dotted with pockets of civilization, kingdoms, nations, and city-states, all trying to carve out a place for themselves and their peoples. Surrounding them is a vast and unforgiving wilderness teeming with danger and littered with the fallen ruins of an ancient empire, mighty sorcerer lords, and the remnants of older and darker civilizations inimical to mankind and best left forgotten. So here we're on to getting some cool adventure-y, creator-y, generator-y tables, which I always am a fan of. So we can roll a d12 to get some major cities. I'm not going to read all of these, but let's see. Number 1 is the mighty City of Thrones, capital of the greatest and most populous kingdom in the West, ever hungry to expand. I'm thinking you'll be able to guess what the inspiration for that is. But number 6 is the seaport city-state on the arid southern coast, western hub of maritime trade between north and south. There's also City of Pyramids, the Feathered City. I like that I don't want to say the names, but that one, I like the fact that they're not names. So you can come up with whatever name you like. I also like that part that's bolded because it really gives you the important bit about it. The City of Thieves, the Feathered City, the City of Marvels, the City of Elephants, the City of Spires. What's in the bitter north, you ask? Well, you can roll a die and find out. It might be the bleak forest of the barren Ravenlands. To the west, what could we have? We get another table. It could be the Grand Port, capital of the West's greatest seafaring power, or could be the Lost Isles on which ancient malice is imprisoned. And then let's see, that was to the coast of the West. If you kind of go to another part of the West, you get a walled fort on the edge of the Great Western Forest. Intriguing. In the burning South, there might be a trade camp built around a lush oasis. The Near East, these are all tables, by the way. And I'm just reading one from each table. In case you're listening to this and you're wondering what happened to the tables, they're all tables. I'm just reading one from each. In the Near East, there might be the forbidden mountain abode of the Dark Seers. In the distant East, Even beyond them, you might find one of the well-armed rampart villages of the far provinces, and then we get a D100 table with a bunch of miscellaneous locations, which could include the royal crypts from which sounds have been emanating, a hidden valley filled with ancient beasts from another time, or the long forgotten arcane portal beneath the city of spires. Really cool stuff. I really like that you can kind of create, not kind of, I really like that you can take these tables and create your own version of of this lost age. And it's interesting because you get sort of a hex crawl, hex map feel, but there's no hex map. You would presumably put them on your hex map. Ooh, now we get some adventure tables. I'm always down for adventure tables. We get some goals, a D20 table of what the characters are doing, locations, where the action happens. Another that's a D10 table, and then a D20 table of adventure hooks. I'll just read one of the adventure hooks. One or more of the characters is completing an initiation, quest, rite of passage, or similar ritual. I think these probably will work best, these hooks, with this sort of episodic sword and sorcery story. Because you think about your Conan story, they start off with him in a bar when he's broke. They start off with him on the run. They started with him about to march into battle. They start out with him after the battle. They start out with him in the middle of a job. So I think if you take on that pattern of adventure, you can start your adventure with, okay, you're about to undergo this ritual or some kind of initiation. You're in the middle of it or about to be finished, or you were hired on a caravan and there you are. The nice part about it is you get to do kind of an in media res type approach where you don't have to have the whole start in the tavern, look at the job board, whatever. You can probably even discuss it with your party, just roll some hooks and say, here are the things on this week's episode of the barbarians. Where do you guys want to be? What do you guys want to be doing? And then just kind of bam, you're in it. Bam, take it up another notch. We get a bunch of villains, D20 table of villains, D12 table of inhuman villains. We get a complication. The D20 table might be someone important in the characters is taken hostage, or the adventure occurs in the midst of a war. Those are all good. And then a twist. What will surprise the characters could be a second urgent adventure goal is revealed. A third party appears and complicates the adventure. Maybe one or more of the characters are betrayed. Why did you betray me? And then we can roll some dice for some rewards and treasures. So we roll a D12 and then a D6. So we get 3 options for each one of the D12, depending on what we roll on the D6. So it could be an armor or shield. It could be an arcane service. It could be a password, so on and so forth. Then this final table is called the Menagerie. Less a random encounter table than a list of ancient beasts common enough that one might expect to encounter them while adventuring in the Lost Age. So basically, let's see, whether in person or on a flag, crest, or pictograph. So basically, you just get some kind of random ancient beast that you might want to feature somewhere. It's a three-part table consisting of a D20, and then you roll a D6, and depending on what your result of the D6 is, will be the column that you're reading when you're looking for the row where you roll the D20. Perkins says tables are always great for seeding inspiration to build out a session or campaign series. Yeah, I love it. You can't ever have enough tables. I mean, you just have to be clear, right? And confusing tables are just messy, but tables are good. And these are not confusing. And then we have backstories for each of it looks like we're going to get each for the classes. So since I'm cognizant of being at the hour, not going to read them, but we get a D6 backstories for the archers, barbarians, captains, knights, nomads, soldiers, assassins, bravos, natives, pirates, scouts, thieves, beast lords, druids, mystics, shamans, sorcerers, warlocks. Whew, a lot. And now some hacks. Hey, it's your game, right? Do what you want. And then you just get some options, including variable resolve, some options for wealth. You can make it more lethal. You can lower the hit dice. You can do stuff with powerful weapons or small weapons, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to read all of these, but I always like that you give some options, or that the author gives some options in here. Maybe some that they've thought, hey, I played the game and with my group and we did these things, and even though it might not work for you, and I didn't feel like it, I wanted to put it in the base rules. I'm going to give you this thing because it seems like it might be a kind of a cool thing that might work. And then you get some looks like some information on how to create your own class, which is always great. I'm not going to read through these, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. And then it looks like this is kind of an appendix N sort of deal. And then we get some character sheets, and then we get the OGL. Cool. So that was, I scroll, can we scroll on through here? Over 100 pages of By This Axe I Hack. My final thoughts. Remember, I'm just reading it, so I don't have play experience. I can't come to it saying, "Oh, this is going to be play like this X, Y, and Z." I don't know, but from reading it, much like with There and Hack Again, I really like it. I think the flavor of the genre, in this case, sword and sorcery, comes through. I think it's got pretty much everything that I would want in terms of if I was going to play in a sword and sorcery campaign, and I'm rifling through to see all the different archetypes that I might expect to find. I feel like they're all there. It's built on the Black Hack, which is a very solid chassis. Certainly, it's one that, given all the hacks to the Black Hack, is a very easily customizable chassis if you want to. And in fact, in here, that you get some great tips for how to build more classes if you want them. And there's stuff for building out your own Lost Age mini setting, or just not mini setting, just setting. And there's rules for some extra things if you want to hack up the hack, so to speak. So really great, Leonard. I really appreciate you sending this my way. This was a really fun read. Let me know, guys, in the chat what you guys think about it, or in the comments, since I'm going to be wrapping this up in a minute. Thanks, Leonard, for sending it to me. I really enjoyed reading it. I didn't see any typos, which is always a plus. And folks who have watched my streams know that I tend to stumble over typos when they hit me. So always a good sign when I don't run into any. Again, I think you've got two great kind of Black Hack visions here. Maybe I'll say vision. That's a good one. One for sword and sorcery. The earlier one for more kind of high fantasy, or at least the way I describe high fantasy, kind of Tolkien type adventures. Really great stuff. There are links in the show description if you want to pick it up on drive through. Awesome things. I'm not sure, just in general, what I'm going to do tomorrow. I don't know. I got a bunch of stuff. It's usually there's a little bit of what kind of hits me, what I feel inspired about. So I'm not sure, but I'm really glad I got to look at this. Thanks everyone for spending the time. If you give a thumbs up to the video on your way out, that'll be awesome. If you're in here and you're not subscribed and you feel like subscribing, that would also be awesome. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. And there's a companion for this too. So check out, if you like this and you want more, check out the companion. Other than that, game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later. Thanks, Leonard, for hanging out. Bye now.